Hi, everyone. Welcome back. My name is Angela Huang with Regent Consultancy. Today, I'm super thrilled to welcome Susan Bloomfield, who is a Chief Marketing Officer at Stream Realty Partners. Susan and I worked together at Colliers International about like a decade ago now. But we're super thrilled to have this, chat. We're going to be talking about the commercial real estate industry and how marketing adds value and just some of the changes that we see and what we think the future holds for the industry and the marketing professionals. So I'm going to kick it off by bringing Susan here and have her just kind of talk through her professional background and how she got into commercial real estate. So without further ado, Susan, take it away.
Hi,
Welcome.
I'm super excited. I love to talk about all of this in an industry that I absolutely love. Yeah, I got started in this industry by answering a call for a receptionist position at Lee and Associates. And honestly, I was going to college and married young, and I didn't think anything. I don't even know about commercial real estate, honest to God. And so they put me on these. It was like I had the interview, and they put me on the phones to test me, and it was insane. I'm like, what, And I was so bad, so I'm like, well, that I am not getting that job. I go home, and they call me, and they said, hey, first of all, thank you for coming in. You were terrible on the phones, but we want to bring you back and talk about another opportunity. And I'm like, okay. And it was funny because, they didn't really have a position, but they're like, we think like research could be something that you can go into. And I remember meeting with Boyd Plowman, who's still one of my favorites, um, long since retired from the anything, I think, but basically interviewed me and kind of told me about this role. And it was my first like real professional interview, and I was terrible. It was really terrible, but I kept it pretty light. But they put me into a room, and they basically said, we need you to enter all these brochures. This is before CoStar. Enter all these brochures. And Lee and Associates at that time had they've developed their own database. And so I learned everything about the market, literally. I knew the owners, I knew all the buildings, I knew um, the tenants. Like I just learned a lot, and it was so perfect for me to do it. And I got a real love for the brokerage side of things, the sales side, and I had a lot of respect for how they would go and chase this business and provide these solutions to some pretty sometimes very complex problems, and learned a lot about industrial and logistics and population bases and supply chains over time. It just was a lot that I just fell in love with. And the fact that these professionals could change the trajectory of a region's economic prosperity, honest to God. Like, I don't think people realize that. There's sometimes commercial real estate gets, it can be looked down upon because it's building up and building out. But it really does more than that. Like, these people are helping to create spaces and places that provide jobs and creates a revitalization most of the time. It diversifies the economy so it can withstand bumps. And yeah, and I went from there. I mean, I was in operation. I went to marketing there, but operations and business development. And I did a couple of stints as a junior broker, like what they call runners at that time, and a grunt. And I just learned a lot. And I ended up, what I really loved about marketing was the ability to impact outcomes when pursuing business. And so, and then, so I really got a love of the kind of bottom of the funnel with pursuits and business development from pursuit marketing, but then really started learning more about the top of the funnel and everything in between, and being able to help others, help our professionals tell the story, their value, their intrinsic value of what they deliver personally, their team, the platform, the brand, then, like positioning properties on the investor side to on the occupier side, understanding the client's brand and really what they're looking for to help solidify their objectives by, via a site or a location. So complex, but yet so intertwined that you can never get bored in this industry. So I just, it's always uncovering the why. And I ended up, now what I'm doing is kind of leading a marketing, building a marketing platform, leading a team of some great people. And, when I worked with you, I mean, we had such a great team, and I love all that too. I love the backside of it. It's like the team dynamics and building a high performing team that's like service minded, but this mentality of like, let's be at our last best. Let's push the boundaries of what we did yesterday, So
Mhm. I
that
love
gets me
that.
excited.
And you've worked with some of the biggest brokerage firms like CBRE and Colliers. And so, like, since you started, what do you think has changed in the industry in terms of how brokers market themselves and how they position themselves?
I mean, fundamentally, they moved away from, and this goes back many years, from transactional thinking. I mean, you can still be in a transactional space, but over the years, it went from transactions to advisory, to really interdisciplinary kind of understanding of your world. But like, if I'm a an agency leasing broker, I have to really, what really has changed, what I've seen, is fully understanding the platform and how you service a client end to end. So on the investor cycle, what does that look like? And that, starting with research and understanding sales enablement technologies to help them figure out where to place their money, and when to acquire, when to dispose, and how best to position themselves and their assets. You know, that's one area that you focus, but as an agency leasing broker, if I would be looking, and they often do, I'm looking at the occupier cycle. I'm really understanding who fills these buildings, or assets, and why, and understanding market behaviors and industry behaviors. Like, I think being, it's so funny with in marketing too, right? You got to be full stack. You've got to understand all the different disciplines within marketing. And I think, as you know, a brokerage professional or other professionals, client-facing professionals in the industry, you have to really understand the business end to end to help you become the very focused expert. And that doesn't mean that you're, wearing multiple hats. That's not what I'm talking about. It's broadening your perspective to come up with the right solutions for your client, the clients that you serve. And so I think that it's about connecting those dots and really working with the rest of the levers at your disposal. And I think that that's really changed, because it used to be, right? I lease buildings, and I go out there,
Right,
or I
right.
find tenants and I put them in buildings, but so much has changed. And like, the use of like technology to better understand what's going on, like I always say space, place, being, right? So like for a tenant who's looking for a space, but it has to be situated in an area that feeds their employees, that help makes them, when I say feed, I mean from everything from, their well-being to their productivity to their um, culture, like what they're seeking. Um, and so, GIS, location intelligence, like that has to come into play. And um, it's just, we've gone deeper. I think it's just like getting deeper into really being aligned with what the client needs, as opposed to being so transactionally focused. And that has been happening over the last, call it 20 years, but it's really become very apparent in the way that companies are building their platforms, and how non-siloed all of them are becoming. And Stream is definitely trying to remain flat, but with regards to access, but deep with regard to expertise.
Oh, I like that. And it's really interesting because I feel like the real estate industry in general has been one of the industries that may have maybe slower to adapt to new technology,
Um,
like compared to maybe tech and others. But I remember when we were at Colliers together, you were one of the first ones to introduce Prezi. And
yeah,
it was just like, "Oh, wow." Like, people were just like, "Holy moly, that's amazing," because, everybody was doing, like, the printed brochures and, the big banner and all that, and no one really used technology to
yeah,
present their listing in a very unique way. So can you talk about, like, since then even, like, in the past, like, 5, 10 years with more platforms coming in and software, like, how do you see the companies like Stream using technology to, better position themselves?
yeah. I mean, it runs the gamut. You have to look at technology as a to when they say sales enablement, which is an overused term, it really does mean that it enables you to do more with even less resources, but to find maybe things that are seemingly uncorrelated, but they are. I love like Esri's tagline. It's like helping you see what others don't, and that's with the advancement of visual business intelligence, dashboards, VBI, all that, Power BI. Um, and Esri included in that. It's like you start to see layers of data. Let me start with data first. Data is everything. And I think that that's what's really transformed the industry is, the commercial real estate industry and all companies have so much data, but it sits in different repositories across the platform. So different even business lines will have a certain set of data. Um, and but they all have similar data points like client names, properties. Think about CoStar, huge, right? It has all this data, but similar data points. And so, like, being able to capture all that and then put it into the technologies, having the technologies that we use, whether it's business intelligence, prospecting, or CRMs, and having them all connect is the holy grail. I always say it. So people watching this, if they're in my company, will go, "Oh, there she goes again." It really is. You need like this data repository warehouse that feeds everything else so that you can start to see the layers of data to tell you more about yourself, the company, and how our behaviors and when we react to something, your clients' behaviors, the market's behaviors, the end, consumers, the what their behaviors are like. And what's really changed in the industry is finally being aware that we have to rely on technology along the sales funnel at every stage of the sales cycle, right? And it's hard because it's a behavioral change. Like even CRM, if you think about it, you should theoretically use it on a daily. It should be like you drink water. You make a call, you input the information that you just gathered. Something happens with a particular pursuit or an assignment, you should be recording that so that you can start seeing patterns. And this is still a relationship business. I mean, we're doing all of this to create better relationships. And the only way to do that is really to know the people that you're dealing with. And so, you know, the technology helps us there. But now you've got like also, let's talk about AI for a second. I mean, right? AI is embedded. We've been using, I think what people don't get is they only think of ChatGPT and what OpenAI has done. But like AI has been around for a long time. We've been using it for a long time. But not knowing it, that that's what was behind all of this. Before that, you had like, decision trees, right? And so this is really, for me, I'm like, this is the best time to be alive on the planet. I know that there's a lot of fear with AI, but I use it every day intentionally. So whether it's embedded in my software programs or I am using, you know, Gen AI like through ChatGPT or Perplexity, I use them all, by the way, because they all can give different answers, and I use it as a foundation for some things. I'm a writer too, so I don't leverage it to help like replace that talent, but it can provide really good foundational stuff when you don't know where to start. But my whole team uses it. And so it's like I was thinking about this because I've been using it for the last what, several months. Let's talk about 6 months, something like that. Um, intentionally. And now it's like it's open all the time. I use it all the time. Like I'm like, you know what? Rewrite for impact. And getting good at those prompts and knowing how to use that type of technology is great. But it's going to be also like we use another tool. I'm going to give this a plug. Really, is Navigator CRE, and it's our like our it's our it's a dashboard market analysis kind of tool. So it can take like transactional data, portfolio data, and then it can display the aggregate information or analysis and put it on a dashboard. And they've also contracted with OpenAI, and so they're, just think about that. So it's going to be able to analyze all this data where it would take hours to do stuff like that. And there's so many more other so many tools that can do pro formas, projections, analyze and aggregate tons of data really quickly. Another one, and like this is controversial, but blockchain is here and it's not going anywhere. And honestly, I think, and it's not so when people think of like cryptocurrency and blockchain, that's what they're thinking about. And they're thinking about all the bad actors in that space, but that's not what people are, that's not the only thing or the legacy that it's leaving. It's blockchain is so great to me because I see it not just for like tokenization of assets and uh, digital currencies and in the investment space. I'm not just thinking of it that way. I think about the other holy grail in our world would be the management of documents. I mean, and connecting the dots there. And I was like, blockchain could be such a game changer for commercial real estate, and it will be. You've already got some of the biggest investors in the world using it, and they're tokenizing some of their assets. But think about if you use it on the back of the house for blockchain for file management, and then using AI on top of it to connect clients and other pieces of data, because it would have everybody would have an ID. See, the biggest issue is that data points get lost because there's no tie, and they can only tie with if they were the same or they had some sort of ID. So in my mind, marketing is going to be leading the forefront on what we do with blockchain, I think, and what we do with
Wow.
cryptocurrency or digital currency. Got to stay away from crypto. And so, like, I think there's just so much that is going to be impacted by, or that will impact our industry.
Mhm.
Also, the way that our companies are working, think about that. So, our clients are going to be working differently with the use of automated tools like AI, right? They're going to look different. So, how does that impact space? And we need to know that. That's the kind of stuff like marketing people should really be thinking about because we're profiling, behaviors and we respond to that. So I don't know. Like I see, I don't know if that answered your question, but I see it coming. It's not unlike when the internet first came out. It's not unlike when cell phones, because nobody would think that you would your whole life and all of your work could be done on this mini computer.
Yeah,
I mean, no one would ever think that, right?
that's right.
Um, and I remember I can hear everything that anybody's ever said to me with regards to cell phones, email, internet. I hear it. It'll never impact what we do. You can never, it'll never impact our industry. And I think the fear has always been that people get replaced. And I don't think that's true. I really do think that marketing, you know, sales is a one-to-one connection, and so they need to figure out what motivates people, what really is their personal agenda. There's always that business agenda, but what is my personal agenda, and how do I speak to that? How do I help them get what they need? Marketing is a one to many, but it's still based on behavior. And so, like, I it's not going to replace that relationship building business. We have to connect on a human level. And but I got to tell you, man, it speeds it up. It makes us so efficient, but more than that, it gives us so much more insight than we would have. It creates a 3D view where we as humans really only see 1D half the time.
Yeah, and I would think that technology, with all these tools available, like up and coming brokers, for example, I think that can really help develop their business, right? Maybe they don't have the relationships that seasoned brokers have. So if they use all of this and work with marketing, I feel like they can actually build their book of business more efficiently and more even quickly.
Yeah, they of course they would, and you would think that the people always think that the logical answer to the changes, the change management needed in the industry, our industry to really advance in that, in using technology would be the youth that are coming in. But the truth is that's not it's not always the case. It is how you are wired. Do you have a growth mindset
Point.
or
Yeah.
not? So those with growth mindsets, both young and more mature in their career, are the ones that are adopting the technology the fastest. And you have to, and despite the age, you have to use those people as champions to go out and show how this actually helps. But you'll always have people who just going to resist. And that's okay. You don't need everybody. You just need enough of the right people to make the changes. But like even prospecting, all the prospecting tools now have an AI component in it. And so, and an integration, right? So you can integrate into LinkedIn, you can integrate into your CRM. Even LinkedIn has LinkedIn Sales Navigator, which also has an AI component. I mean, you can be so much more efficient and effective in targeting people and understanding what they need and how they want to be communicated with, right? Like the thing is, time is precious. People on the other end of that phone or at the other end of a campaign don't, and everybody has become more and more, attention deficit. And so you have to understand what we think will at least engage them to look. And it may not be at that moment in time, right? Like we know this in marketing, but if you do it consistently and but you're on target with messaging, you're going to meet them where they are at some point where that need is right there, right at the surface, and you're there. And so, but that still requires understanding what matters to them. So, yeah, this is definitely, that's why I'm like, it's not going to replace human interaction, but it will get you there first. It'll get you there fastest. And this is a highly competitive market and
Right.
industry, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah, it's like finding them right when they're ready to buy and raise their hand, and I think so many people that are, I think that's where the marketing and sales have to work together because I think sales, they're very eager to close the deal. But I think to get people there, like you said, marketing can use, tech to really kind of analyze their behavior and help educate them and then make them realize that, okay, this is what I need. And then, the brokers are right there to close the deal. But you're right. Like, I don't see that being replaced by AI or any other,
not at this moment. I mean, I can't
yeah.
speak to, 50 years from now, but I can say that like right now, people still want connection. I mean, if you even
Mhm,
think about
mhm.
like, what's impacting our industry right now is the office use and really kind of how work has changed. And we've beat that horse to death, like hybrid, remote, flexible. But you have to give people a reason to connect, you know, whether it's I'm sending you something and I want you to read it, whether I want you in the office, like there needs to be a reason and a purpose for people to be there. There needs to be a purpose for me to want to call you up. Like somehow you've connected to something that's important to me. And so like I think I think what really is what the bottom of this. And so marketing people like strategy mostly. And and you have strategists and you have people that are good at the tactics and the execution, but The strategy requires a lot of endurance and grit. It just does. It requires focus and patience. And I think in the sales, like you've, and rightfully so, like there's a lot of pressure to keep that pipeline full. And when you're fully commissioned, right, like that's a big responsibility. You are responsible for keeping all these people employed and your families and yourself and getting to that whatever your goals are. And so it's more comfortable to move to tactics. It's because you think you'll see immediate results, but the truth is you're probably going to get a lot of misses. Whereas on the strategic side, and you can do both, right? It's not mutually exclusive. You can figure out a plan for short-term wins, but you can never take your eye off the long-term game. And what's going to pay off in greater dividends is the longer term strategy. And so I think the real battle between marketing and sales is that right there. Long term, short term. So,
Yeah, I do think that you're right. Like the sales, they prioritize the short-term wins. They just have to close the deals quickly, whatever it
fill
takes.
the pipeline, got to keep it full.
Yeah. But I
Yeah, it
think
takes a long time to get there too, right?
that's
So,
the thing. I think the sales cycle, may be getting longer and longer. I mean, even on like the real estate investment side, typically you will see about 4 to 6 months until
yeah,
people are just ready to even have that conversation, that serious conversation about possibly investing. So I can only imagine when you're dealing with, multi-million-dollar property and
yeah.
what the brokers are selling, like, I mean,
And you spend years getting it in even
wow.
into your pipeline, quite possibly, and there's no guarantee that that deal will close. And for in sales to trust marketing to know their client like they do, you have to win that trust. And we don't. We're not saying that we do. Like you, again, one to one, you know that person, that client better than we ever could. But generally speaking, the one to many, we can get you there. We can keep you in front. But like they don't want to lose. I can imagine, and I would feel probably the same way. I've worked so hard to get that one deal, and I have to protect it at all costs. And so I think that that's also part of it. It's a trust factor in who owns what piece of this journey, you know. So
So this is a really great segue into our next video because I want us to kind of talk about the challenges that, marketing professionals are facing right now in the industry and just have a real talk about it. So we'll just cover that in the next video and we'll see you in a few minutes.